The dollar bill is the most universally recognized unit of currency in the world. But what does its distinctive design really signify? Embedded in the design are mysterious images and arcane symbols.
There's a very distinctive emblem, an uncompleted pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Providence at the top.
But why is it there, and what does it mean?
America's secret destiny is concealed in those symbols. It's a civilization without a belief in God.
In the night, up came a person who was wearing a cloak, and he had in his hands the Great Seal of the United States. Jefferson, of course, looked at it and said, "This is it."
It's a very dangerous thing to reveal the truth, but we have to.
Let's go back to really important individuals here. His name is Nicholas Roerich.
The truncated pyramid with the all-seeing eye on the top. Nicholas Roerich is the person who is responsible for that ending up on the dollar bill.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the President of the United States, and Henry Wallace was the Secretary of Agriculture. Now, Henry Wallace was deeply involved in the occult.
Roerich to Wallace to FDR to the dollar bill.
I was initiated into this very ancient order.
Here we are at the Nicholas Roerich Museum.
Do you really think it has anything to do with the Illuminati?
The owl is the totem symbol of the Illuminati.
Yes, because Roerich was the Illuminati.
They all seem to have been Masons.
His son was murdered.
Those who normally get out, they're killed. Hexagrams are used during occult ceremonies when you're summoning up demons.
Because we're dealing with Lucifer.
And the all-seeing eye of God is one of the emblems that the Freemasons use.
He said, "You're trying to say that Masonry is evil." I said, "It comes right out of the same pit of hell." Didn't win a lot of friends that day.
Our history of the dollar bill is a strange telling, one that involves an American president, a former vice president, a mysterious Russian mystic, and a determined Jewish researcher, on the trail of an ancient artifact that is said to have been in the possession of the most powerful rulers in history, and somehow directly influenced the design of the dollar bill. As incredible as it seems, it's believed this mysterious object could mark the beginning of Armageddon.
There's going to be a bloodbath there.
With them is an expert in the signs and symbols of the occult world.
This is not the eagle.
Who claims that the details of the dollar bill are no accident, but represent the diabolical working of secret societies.
This is the eye of the phoenix, looking on in favor of the secrets of the dollar bill.
Most debates about the design of the dollar bill usually involve the founding fathers of America, but it's important to remember that they only designed a Great Seal. There are many details to the dollar bill that go far beyond the seal itself. The Great Seal was developed through 3 committees, involving a total of 14 men. But in the end, the work was submitted in June of 1782 by essentially one man, Charles Thomson. What is little known is that while Thompson presented a preliminary sketch, his final design was submitted to Congress only in the form of a written description. Looking at the rough drawings Thompson put together with artist William Barton, it becomes clear that many of the specific details of the seal, as we know it today, were added later on. For example, above the head of the American eagle are 13 stars that form a six-pointed hexagram. While Thompson's description called for the 13 stars, their hexagram formation was not part of his original description and is not present in the earliest realizations of the design. The hexagram seems to have been added in the 20th century. The nature of the Great Seal is so mysterious that some believe that it came from a supernatural force. An account recorded by Dr. Robert Hieronymus in his book, Founding Fathers' Secret Societies, says that the Great Seal was given to Thomas Jefferson by a mysterious cloaked figure.
I love that story. The Founding Fathers were trying to get the Great Seal of the United States designed. And they needed to have a design for the Great Seal to represent our nation. And Jefferson went outside in the night, and up came a person, an individual, who was wearing a cloak, who he couldn't totally see, and he had in his hands the Great Seal of the United States. And he basically said, or this being said, you know, you're struggling over the symbol for our nation? Here it is.
The account reads that Jefferson told a strange story. A man approached him wearing a black cloak that practically covered him, face and all, and told him that he, the strange visitor, knew they were trying to devise a seal, and that he had a design which was appropriate and meaningful.
Jefferson, of course, looked at it, according to this story, and said, this is it. This is it. He knew it was it, and it was right. So he supposedly came running back into whatever, whether it was a tent or whatever it was, and he showed it to other individuals, and he told them about, they met this person outside. Of course, they went outside to go to find the guy, and he's gone. So supposedly we'll never find out who designed the Great Seal of the United States.
While Dr. Hieronymus admits that he is skeptical about such stories, there are others who claim to believe them to this day. Perhaps it has something to do with John Adams, who was on the first seal committee with Thomas Jefferson. According to the written account, John Adams was there when this bizarre event took place. Oddly enough, the Adams Memorial in Washington, D.C. is adorned with this mysterious cloaked figure. Perhaps it's just a coincidence. The first historical account of the Great Seal's design was written by a 19th century American Army officer named Charles A.L. Totten. In his book on the secret symbols of the dollar bill, Masonic author David Ovison writes that Totten equated the birth of the United States with the beginnings of what he called the New Atlantis, a title given to a work by Sir Francis Bacon, one of the mysterious financial backers of the Virginia colony. Ovison goes on to write that the Great Seal and the dollar bill represent the most extraordinary example in history of the public evolution of a magical design. Even as Sir Francis Bacon and his contemporary, Dr. John Dee, were said to be in contact with the spirit realm, there are those who believe that it is this dimension that has been guiding the course of America and the so-called evolution of the dollar bill. Debates have gone on for years about the secret symbolism of the Great Seal of the United States, whether or not these symbols represent secret societies, or if they are what the White House and the U.S. Congress currently tell us, symbols of divine providence, of stability, and the patriotism of America. What the Founding Fathers intended as they designed and ultimately approved of the Great Seal remains mostly a mystery.
There's still a lot of mysteries around a lot of things that happened in this country. It's not in our history books.
There can be no doubt that those things hidden in the shadows of the last 2 centuries are not easily brought to light. But when one comes into the modern era, into the age of photography, film, and the advanced practices of mass media, it becomes a bit easier to document world events and the intentions of those who have helped to shape them. In the late 19th century, Harvard professor Charles Eliot Norton referred to the Great Seal as a dull emblem of the Masonic fraternity.
Most people, of course, when they think of the Great Seal, they think of the obverse of the front side. And that is an eagle with arrows and olive branch and 6-pointed star above the eagle's head. And that basically was a symbol that most Americans accept as our seal.
But on the back, or reverse of the note, there are 2 circular designs, because the original Great Seal was 2-sided like a coin, with a front and a back face. The front face, or obverse, showed the familiar American eagle, but on the other side there is a much more enigmatic image.
It's a totally different experience altogether. There are symbols on it which aren't American. There are no pyramids in America.
Who put the symbols on the Great Seal of America and the back of the $1 bill, and why are they there? Conspiracy theorists are obsessed with the idea that these images have special significance for Freemasons. The fact that the pyramid on the Great Seal is unfinished is also significant.
The meaning is that when the capstone of the Great Pyramid is finally lifted into place, that's when America will truly become the nation that it is supposed to be.
The emblem of the pyramid is only the beginning of the case presented by conspiracy theorists, to see hidden Masonic codes and messages in the iconography of the dollar bill. They claim that the eye at the top of the pyramid is also a Masonic image derived from Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Something the ancient Egyptians called the Wadjet eye. And the Wadjet eye, the eye of Horus, as it's known as well, seems to represent eternal life. It seems to represent life itself and resurrection.
Horus, the god of the ancient Egyptians. Of course, this is an Egyptian pyramid. You don't find pyramids in America, you find them in Egypt. And that pyramid is the symbol of the eye, was in the Egyptian religion Horus, which was the newborn sun. Every morning when the sun came up, his name was Horus. That was the solar divinity in Egypt. Horus was God's son, the light of the world, who is risen. He is our risen Savior, our risen. And so Horus was referred to as God's son, and that's why the light is emanating from around, because it's the sun. The sun is a round eyeball of God. The ancient Egyptians believed the pupil of God was the sun, and he's watching you. And therefore, the sun was very bright. And so today we even say someone who is extremely intelligent is brilliant. They're bright. And that's why God is, of course, the most brilliant of all. Therefore, the sun is the most brilliant because it's God's eye. All right, anyway, there are 13 layers on the pyramid. And the 1776 at the bottom is 1776. A lot of people think it's because of the country being founded in 1776. It has nothing to do with that. As I said, this is on a document published back in 1774, 75, and then in 1776 the Roman numerals appeared on it in Europe. So what it amounted to is that the 1776 was when this secret society actually formed itself into a secret society and put itself into operation. They were the basis for what we call today in our country the Bavarian Illuminati. Was the basis for what we call today the Colombian faction. The Colombian faction of the Illuminati came here right after this government was formed, and that's where we get today this Columbia Space Shuttle, Columbia Movies, Columbia Television, Columbia Records, everything, Columbia University. As a matter of fact, Columbia TV, Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS. What is the symbol for CBS? It's the all-seeing eye. And that's why our government is in the District of Columbia, because these guys own our government. They print our money, and they own not only the government, but they own you. You are their property.
On a dollar bill, you can find 13 steps on the pyramid, 13 leaves and berries on the olive branch, 13 stars, and 13 stripes, bars, and arrows.
13 5-pointed stars, and when you draw lines between them, you'll draw a 6-pointed star.
If the hexagonal star is lifted out and placed over the image of the pyramid, its points indicate specific letters in the Latin inscription surrounding it, which are thought to be an anagram.
Inside the American Dictionary is the word anagram, which is the intentional scrambling of the letters of a word to conceal the real word. So if you re-scramble, you get Masons. This is how we know that the Masons originated the drawings for the Great Seal of the United States.
This search for concealed meanings in the iconography is not confined to the imagery alone. It is claimed that the number 13, the most ominous number in Western tradition, is hidden throughout the symbols on the $1 bill.
The Masons in 1960 issued an article inside the New Age magazine in which they identify the number 13 and the numbers of different symbols connecting itself to 13 as being Masonic.
They point out the repetition of the symbolic number 13. There are 13 leaves on the olive branch in the eagle's right claw, 13 arrows in the left claw, 13 stars above the eagle's head, and 13 bars and stripes on the shield.
If we take a look at the 13 stars directly above the head of the eagle and connect the dots, you will see where the very first hexagram is located. And if you notice that surrounding the hexagram is the 28 guidelines that make a circle. Now, inside every single point, the 6 points, is a star. There are 6 of them. They surround now the 7 stars. Remember, 6 is the number of man, 7 is the number of God. Now, it is man that is surrounding God or is placed above God.
If what Doc is saying is true, this could represent the person the Bible calls the man of sin, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. Doc's interpretation seems to also fit the worship of Lucifer, for in the Bible, Lucifer declares that he will exalt his throne above the stars of God. Next, Doc claims a second hexagram can be found by connecting the various points where the much talked about number 13 is represented.
And don't try to tell me it's the 13 colonies.
There are 13 stars above the eagle's head, 13 stripes in the shield, 13 leaves on the olive branch, 13 arrows in the eagle's talon, and then 13 letters in the phrase E pluribus unum, which makes for 2 points on either side of the eagle's head, for the 6 points total of the hexagram.
If we take a close look at the same seal and connect all the 13s together, just like we did when we were kids, when we were playing that game, connect the dots, once we connect all the 13s, it becomes very apparent where the second hexagram can be found. And this one, which is very obvious, already comes with a circle around it.
So this is the second hexagram here in figure 2.
Yes.
And then where's the third hexagram?
The third hexagram can be found on the other part of the Great Seal. Again, connect all the 13 together, the 13 letters, the 13 steps in the pyramid, connect all this together. And you'll note with the circle that's already there, It forms the third hexagram. In other words, a 6, a 6, and a 6. A 6, 6, 6.
Doc has deciphered a code that, if there, would glorify Lucifer's Messiah, whom the Bible calls the Beast or Antichrist. In the book of Revelation, it reads, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666." Could there really be 3 6-pointed hexagrams on the dollar bill?
Count the feathers. You'll notice that there are 32 feathers on the bird's left wing and 33 on his right wing.
This is understood to refer to the 33 degrees of Masonry introduced by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, America's most prominent Masonic order, whose national HQ is in Washington.
If you had to put a name to the conspiracy that's come down to us through the ages, that some call the Illuminati, some other people call it other things, but I think if you boil it down to its purest, simplest form, you would identify it essentially as Freemasonry. Now that might surprise some of you, but understand that Masonry has been around a long, long time. It may not have always been called Freemasonry, but Masons itself brag about the fact that their first Mason was Tubal-Cain. Now Tubal-Cain, if you know your Bible, was the 7th man from Adam by way of Cain, and he was the guy that invented metalworking. And he is supposedly the first Mason. Now that's pretty far back to start a conspiracy. Then of course you have the flood. After the flood, the Masons say that the first Mason was Nimrod. Now of course we all know who Nimrod was. He's the guy that helped build the Tower of Babel. That's pretty good Masonry. He was the person who basically had the idea for a one world government. He wanted to start a United Nations. He had all these great ideas, you know, one world government, all this kind of stuff, new world order. And God had other ideas. And God came down and he cast confusion and changed the languages of the people. So they went and scattered abroad on the earth. That basically tells us what God thinks about the United Nations. This caused the conspiracy to go underground. And for centuries it existed in various forms. And if you look in the books, the literature of Masonry, you will find that Masonry says it is the direct linear descendant from the ancient mystery religions, from the ancient fertility cults. Now what does that mean? That sounds sort of exciting and mysterious and exotic. Well, the ancient fertility cults were cults that revolved around human and animal reproduction. I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's what they mean. It's Baal worship, essentially. If you study the worship of Baal in the Bible, you've got all these false gods like Molech and Baal and Chemosh and some of these others. All of them, their rites involve sexuality. And that's the same thing that Masonry is. That's why the god of Masonry is the phallus. That's why you have Masonic monuments like the Washington Monument that look like a giant phallic symbol. It's that simple. So this is the conspiracy. And it may have been called many names, like, for example, before the time of Christ, Masonry was called the Dionysian Artificers. Later on, it was called the Gnostics. The Gnostics are basically people who believe that you are saved by secret knowledge, to put it simply. Gnosticism, it comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge, like diagnosis or prognosis. And what they believed is that Christianity, as it is constituted in the Bible, is far too simple. It's a Greek heresy off of the truth of Christianity. And what it means is that you have to go through all sorts of elaborate rituals and details and deal with archons and aeons and logos and all these different things in order to receive salvation. Modern day Gnostics would be examples, for example, the Mormons, the Masons, a lot of New Agers. All these people believe they're saved by acquiring some sort of arcane, hidden wisdom. Then we've got pre-Islamic sorcery and alchemy, but that in turn birthed what is called the assassin cult. Now, some of you may have heard of this. There was a group that came out of Orthodox Islam that was called the Ishmaelians. It was like a splinter group. And these Ishmaelians were a small but powerful heresy. And one of their chief leaders was a sheikh by the name of Hassan-i-Sabah. And this guy led a group that was called the Hashishin. That's where we get our word assassin, is from the Arabic word Hashishin. Now, why were they called Hashishin? Because the word means eaters of hashish. How this guy worked, he is kind of the father of the modern day conspiracy. He was the father of modern day espionage. And he was the first programmer, the first mind control operator. And this is what he did. If someone wanted to join his group, he knew he needed elite warriors because he had all of Islam arrayed against him. When you died, you would go to a place called paradise, where you could do all the stuff you weren't allowed to do as a Muslim. You could eat pork, you could drink wine, and there were these beautiful angels called Uris that looked just like Playboy centerfolds, and they would minister to your every whim throughout eternity. And this is the Islamic paradise. Now, what Hassan would do with one of these recruits, because he needed someone who was just a fanatic, and what he would do is he would bring this person in and feed them a sumptuous meal. And the meal would be laced with copious amounts of hashish. In other words, he'd get the guy really stoned. I mean, we're talking seriously stoned here. And then he would take him into a secret garden in the heart of his castle, and there would be beautiful women, all the pork he could eat, all the wine he could drink, and for 3 or 4 hours the guy would just really enjoy himself. And then he would bring him back when he started coming down off the trip. And he would sit him in the chair and he would say, I have taken you to paradise. I have that power. If you serve me in jihad and die in my service, you will go straight to paradise for all eternity. What do you think the guy said? And these guys were total fanatics. I mean, he was famous for doing things like he'd have 10 of them line up on a wall, he'd snap his fingers and they'd jump in unison 1,000 feet to their deaths, grinning all the way. And those have become some of the bywords of the Illuminati that he had such a profound influence on. Okay, moving along. What happened next is the royal secret of Masonry passed from the Assassins to the Templars. Now, the Knights Templar were warrior knights. They were Catholics that took part in the Crusades that you've probably all heard about. They went over to the Holy Land to try and capture the Holy Land back from the Saracens. Now, the Saracens were a kind of Muslims. During this conflict, which lasted over a century, they began to interface with the Assassins. They began to share each other's secret. And so when they lost the Crusades, the Templars went back to Europe, immensely wealthy, immensely powerful, and full of occult knowledge. Now, you got to understand something about the Templars. They got very wealthy because they basically provided protection for the pilgrims as they journeyed from Europe to visit the sacred places in the Holy Land. And they got very, very wealthy. Plus, there are legends that say that they found Solomon's treasure buried in the ruins of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, and that they were fabulously wealthy. They got so powerful, and interestingly enough, they became the first international banksters. Everybody tries to blame the Jews for that one, but actually the first international banksters were in fact the Templars. And they got so powerful and so wealthy, they threatened the Vatican, which was not a wise thing to do. So the Pope got together with the King of France, and they conspired to bring down the Templars. In 1307, on October 13th, Friday, they sent out warrants and captured every Knight Templar that they could find, including the Grand Master, whose name was Jacques de Molay. The next thing is, about 100 years later, along came the Rosicrucians. They had the same secret. Some people say that they were just a resurfacing of the Knights Templar under a different name. After that, just 34 years later, we have Ignatius Loyola and the Jesuits. Now, Ignatius Loyola was a Spanish knight, and he got hit in the leg with a cannonball and had to go through a lengthy convalescence. During that time, he had some sort of conversion experience and decided This sounds familiar, I know. He wanted to start an order of warrior monks, elite warriors that would protect the Pope and would serve the Catholic Church unwaveringly. He came up with a name for this order. He called it Los Illuminados. Now, if any of you speak Spanish, you know that name means the Illuminated Ones. However, the Pope didn't like that name, and so they changed the name to the Society of Jesus. This finally congealed formally into what is called the Mother Lodge in England in 1717. In London, at the Apple Tree Tavern, nice spiritual place, the first meeting formally of the Grand Lodge of England took place. And because most all modern Masonry comes from that place, this is called the Mother Lodge. The next thing that happened is that the Grand Orient came along about 60 years later. That's the most virulent anti-Christian form of Masonry that exists in the world today. Just a few years after that, on May 1st, which is a high satanic holiday, a gentleman by the name of Adam Weishaupt started a group called the Illuminati Ordnen, or the Order of the Illuminati. This is really the modern origin of the conspiracy.
It's suggested that there is one final piece of information on the dollar bill that proves a Masonic plot. Above the eye, at the apex of the pyramid, there is the Latin inscription Annuit Coeptis, which is loosely translated as, Providence has favored our undertakings. But the Masonic conspiracy theorists claim that when it is combined with the lower inscription, a dark intention is unveiled.
America's secret destiny is involved in the Latin phrases Annuit Septis Novus Ordo Seclorum, announcing the birth of the New World Order, and that's what their goal is.
We look at the first part of it on our left, which would be the truncated pyramid one. Above it is a 13-letter Latin expression that says Annuit Coeptis. And directly underneath the base of the pyramid is a 3-word Latin expression, which is Novus Ordo Seclorum. If you were to look up the word, let's say, work, in the English dictionary, you're going to find at least 50 different meanings for it. It is the same thing in Latin. Different words have different meanings. They have more than one meaning. The word seclorum, one of the definitive meanings is secular. Something that is secular is of the world. So it is proper, very proper, to translate the bottom as New World Order, the Novus Ordo Seclorum. The whole of it is saying, announcing the birth of a new world order. The interesting thing about the front of the dollar bill is that there are 4 huge ones. There is one in every single corner. Now if we look at every single one of them, they each have an oval around it, except for the top right-hand one. Now if we look at this blow-up version of it, you will find there's no oval. This is a shield that is surrounding the one. Now the reason there's a shield here is because this is very similar to the original shield that was given to the Rothschild family when Baron Meyer Amschel Rothschild had become knighted in England and received the lordship. If we look across the top of this shield, all the way to the left-hand side, it drops down and forms a crescent moon. It's a crescent moon because it represents the female goddess in the occult world. At the bottom of that shield, of that lunar moon, you will see the owl. And it's very obvious once you take a good look at that part of the crescent moon. And it is the same Illuminati owl that is being worshipped at the Bohemian Grove in California by those members of the Bohemian Grove, where presidents, premiers, kings and queens and heads of nations throughout this world have met. You can tell just by looking at this photo, that is a 40-foot owl. It is made out of oak, and that the worshippers are surrounding that fire pit around that altar, which is easily reflected in the lake around them. This is definitely the owl of the Illuminati.
The rituals performed at the Bohemian Grove are occult and idolatrous. One of them, called the cremation of care, is supposed to be a mock human sacrifice, though some suggest that real killings take place. When President Nixon was there, he commented about the extreme homosexual environment at this all-male boys club. Among other powerful American leaders who have been spotted at the Grove are Ronald Reagan, Dwight Eisenhower, Jimmy Carter, Newt Gingrich, and George Bush Jr. and Sr.
Now when we take a look at the O, it is actually, occultically speaking, the shape of the Ouroboros, the snake that's going around in a circle, devouring itself. This O is actually the eye in this lady's face that they want to look at. This is the O. Now, what's in the center of this O? You take a good look. It is the exact same owl of the Illuminati that we saw on the back of the $1 bill. So the question then becomes, who owns L'Oreal?
But the owl seems to be a major symbol for the secret societies, as they are found repeatedly inside government buildings in Washington, D.C. And a giant owl figure is even seen in the street design, with the United States Capitol in the midst of it.
Now the Druids from the Gaelic means, Druid means men of oak. These people worshipped creation among other things, but their sacred symbol was the owl because the ancient god of magic and of the hunt was Pallas Athena. Her bird was the owl, and that owl represented wisdom. It always has.
Pallas Athena was also the goddess figure who was said to inspire Sir Francis Bacon. But now look at this owl seal at the Bohemian Grove, where it says, "Weaving spiders come not here."
And to assist you in understanding the significance of the two numbers 32 and 33, I would like to explain a little about the Masonic Lodge. Every Mason in America has to go through 3 rituals called degrees, one at a time, and when he is finished, he is called a Master Mason, and a member of the Blue Lodge. He has then 2 options should he wish to go further. He can join the Scottish Rite, shown in green, with 29 more degrees for a total of 32, or he can join the York Rite, shown in yellow, with a total of 10 more for a total of 13. There is a 33rd degree on top of both of these Masonic lodges called the 33rd degree, and it is honorary, and the member must be invited into this degree. There seems to be evidence that this 33rd degree of Scottish Rite runs the entire worldwide Masonic Lodge, so they are extremely important. Now this is the eagle side of the Great Seal of the United States again. Notice that the eagle is looking towards the side with the 33 feathers. So the implication of this drawing is that the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Masonry runs the entire United States, and that this is a secret concealed inside the Great Seal of the United States. I remember in my high school civics class that there was a debate amongst this nation's founding fathers over whether the bald eagle or the American wild turkey should be the national bird of this nation. But my research shows that there was no debate at all. The eagle was always intended to be the national bird from the very beginning, and that the appearance of the debate was a ruse and a scam, another fire engine or some other grain. In the books written by the key Masonic writers, the Lodge and others will convince the researcher that the eagle was an important symbol of something else. The following are 6 quotes on the subject, 5 of which were written by members of the Masonic Lodge. I will not cite the sources of each quote, but just show you the quotes without attribution. The eagle is a symbol of initiation. The eagle is of great antiquity, a symbol of the sun. The eagle was sacred to the sun. The eagle was a bird consecrated to the sun. The eagle represented the Egyptian sun god, Amun-Ra, And the following quote is one of the explanations as to why the eagle is sacred to sun worship. The eagle is also supposed to be the only creature that can look directly into the sun. Now this is an interesting observation. If a human looks directly into the sun, it is quite likely that this person will go blind. But in this quote, the author was saying that the eagle can look directly into the sun without being harmed. But there is a symbolic and concealed meaning behind this statement. It conceals the symbolic thought that the eagle can get directly to the sun god and that man cannot. This appears to be the concealed meaning behind the symbology of the eagle. The eagle can do something that man cannot do, and early man apparently understood that fact, so he used the eagle as a symbol of the way to reach the sun god. Few Americans, if any, know what all of the symbols on the Great Seal mean. As I have briefly mentioned, the numbers 32 and 33 are significant to the Masonic Lodge, but the numbers show up in some rather interesting concealed locations. This is the symbol of the government of the Communist Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, meaning the old Russia. As you can see, it is a globe with what appear to be wheat stalks on either side. But the semicircle to the bottom appears to be out of place and without a logical explanation, especially when you count the rays protruding from the center, because there are 32 of them. The semicircle, which when completed would be a full circle, meaning that it could be a symbol of the sun, which when added to the 32 rays would total 33. One can only imagine what this Masonic symbol has to do with the Communist Soviet Union. The number appears once again in this, the symbol of the United Nations. First of all, the leaves on each side total 13. Do not count the base, and as shall be discussed later, the number 13 is a significant Masonic number. The globe is divided into 32 divisions, with the circle at the top. It is not complete, presumably because it would intersect with portions of the globe. Another explanation might be that the future world government has not brought the United States and Canada into the circle as of yet, because the circle, if completed, would be over the northern part of North America. And the circle plus 32 divisions total 33 in the symbol. Once again, the Masonic numbers 32 and 33 are concealed in the symbol of the United Nations. While I am here, I would like to briefly discuss the connection between the numbers 13 and 33. We in America use a system of inches and feet as a measuring system, and a system known as the metric system uses millimeters and centimeters. If you compare a ruler of 13 inches in length side by side with a ruler of 33 millimeters in length, you will notice that the two rulers are the same length. And that is because the metric system was created by the Masons who caused the French Revolution of 1789. So this is one way you can say that 13 is equal to 33, a Masonic way of saying that Satan's number is equal to the number of the 33rd degree Masons who run the entire Masonic system. I would like to show you another concealed connection between the numbers 13 and 33. It is concealed inside the Masonic Lodge. As I said, the Masons have 3 degrees in what they call the Blue Lodge. The first degree Mason is called an entered apprentice, the second is called a fellowcraft, and the third is called a master Mason. The concealed connection is inside the 2 words Master Mason. First of all, the letter M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and I do not believe that this is another coincidence. Now, if you separate the 2 M's from the 2 words and set them in the next 2 lines like this, and then turn the 2 words sideways, you can see that each M looks like the number 3, and the 2 of them together make them look like the number 33. So there is a concealed 13 and 33 in their choice of the words that describe their third degree inside the Blue Lodge. The Masons have been getting a lot of bad press recently, and the Masons are anxious to overcome that with favorable publicity. This is quite likely the reason that Walt Disney released 2 movies that gave a favorable image to the Masonic Lodge. The first one was the movie entitled National Treasure, released in the year 2004. And the second one was entitled Book of Secrets, and it was released in 2007. Samuel Morse invented the Morse code in 1842, and that code concealed a use of the number 33. The code uses a dot and a dash, and the dash lasts the equivalent of the time it would take to end 3 dots. This is a photograph of a key used to send the Morse code key, and the key is tapped quickly for a dot and then again for a dash, but the sender waits for the time it would take to hit 3 dots before sending the next letter. This is a representation of the number of the Morse code dots and dashes in the word Lucifer, meaning the name of the devil. You will see that it consists of letters requiring 15 dots to send them, and 6 dashes, each of which is equal to 3 dots, totaling 18 dots. 15 dots plus 18 dots obviously equals 33. Just another strange coincidence, I am sure. The number 13 is also a significant number to the Masonic Lodge. This is a page from the April 1960 edition of a Masonic magazine entitled The New Age. Its name has been changed to the Scottish Rite Journal, in which the Masons discuss the mystical number 13. Notice that the top line says Masonic symbols in a $1 bill. The article says that the number 13, used repeatedly in the Great Seal of the United States, was not a coincidence. They wrote that the number has a significant Masonic connection. The article says that there were 13 leaves in the olive branches in the Great Seal, 13 bars and stripes, 13 arrows, 13 stars in the green crest, and 13 layers of stone in the pyramid. This means that the Masons are claiming that the number 13 has a Masonic importance. Now, there are some that claim that the reason that the number 13 is significant on both sides of the Great Seal is because there were 13 states in the original Union of States that formed the federal government. But it appears as if the number has a hidden significance, and that those who founded this nation waited until there were precisely 13 and not 12 or 14 states before they created the United States. But the Masons are claiming the number as one of their own, and shows, at least in this one instance, that the Masons were directly involved in the founding of this nation, and that one of the reasons we can know that is because of their interest in the number 13. But before we examine the number 13, there's another reason that the Founding Fathers selected the American eagle as our national symbol, and that is the fact that 2 words, American eagle, have exactly 13 letters in them. But this is not the only hidden use of the number 13. The words E pluribus union, one of the nation's Latin slogans, reportedly translated into one out of many, also have 13 letters in the words. On the pyramid side of the Great Seal, the 2 words annuit coeptus, meaning the announcement of or the birth of, also have 13 letters in them. There are 13 examples of the letter A on the front of the dollar bill, like finding the letter A in the words federal, states, and America, etc. There are 13 courses of stone on the pyramid. The words "In God We Trust" on the back of the dollar bill have 12 letters in them, and if you add the number of the word 1 to the 12, you get 13. The reverse of the dollar bill contains 13 examples of the number 13, like 13 olive leaves, 13 vertical stripes, etc. And the number 33, I believe, signifying the 33 degrees of the Masonic Lodge, shows up frequently as well. The words "the United States of America" at the top of both sides of the dollar bill have 24 letters in them, and the words $1 have a total of 9. Add the 2 together and you get 33. The word "one" has 9 parts in them, meaning 2 in the letter O, 3 in the letter N, and 4 in the letter E. If you total the shadows behind the letters, they total 11. If you add the 9 plus the 11, you will get a total of 20 units. Then you add the number 1 itself and the 12 letters in the words, "In God We Trust," and you get, strangely enough, a total of 33. Another series of hidden symbolism occurred in the selection of July the 4th, the founding date of this nation. The words have 13 letters in them. But there is another more important concealed symbol in that date, which I will explain later. The year 1776 has a hidden symbolism as well. The last two numbers in the date, meaning the 7 and the 6, when added together, total 13. As it is being shown, this is no coincidence, it is symbolic. The Founding Fathers waited precisely 13 years between 1776 and 1789 to form this nation's first government. George Washington, a very visible member of the Masons, had 12 other generals on his staff. 12 plus himself equals 13. A total of 13 people worked on the Great Seal of the United States. The Navy of the United States had a committee of 13 controlling all naval affairs, and the first fleet of ships had precisely 13 ships in it. The Confederate flag of the South, utilized during the latter stages of the American Civil War, had 13 stars on it. And if you presume that each star stood for an individual state, as it did in the American flag, there should have been only 11 stars in the Confederate flag, because there were only 11 states in the Confederacy. This flag was adopted as the flag of the Confederacy in 1863, about midway in the Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865. There is no way that the 11 states were anticipating the addition of 2 more states to their cause, so that there would have been 1 star for each state. 11 states started the Civil War in the Confederacy, and 11 states finished it. There is one more startling bit of evidence to consider about the involvement of the Masons in the planning of the Civil War. This is a map of the eastern part of the United States, showing a red line over the 33rd degree northern latitude. Latitudes circle the globe parallel to the equator, which means that there are 2 33rd degree latitudes, one called the 33rd degree northern latitude and the other called the 33rd degree southern latitude. The city of Charleston, South Carolina is underneath the 33rd degree northern latitude, and because it is, the Masons created their first 33rd degree temple there, and it was at Fort Sumter, located in the port of Charleston, South Carolina, where the South fired its first shots of the war. Just another interesting coincidence, I am certain. The 2 words, United Nations, have 13 letters as well. And here is a more contemporary use of the number 13 in America.
Now, if we look at the bottom 1 of the reverse side of the dollar bill, you'll see on the right-hand side that, again, there's a lot of busy intersecting diagonal lines. Yet, if we apply the same principle we just used to reveal the hidden owls of the Illuminati and apply it, we will find that there is now a skull-faced winged demon. And it is very obvious, once you take away the background, the busy noise, it becomes very apparent what it is and that it's been there all along. And if we just simply go and enlarge that section, just start with a small one, and just keep enlarging it, and enlarge it even more, even with the background noise there, as I call it, I think it becomes very apparent what we are now looking at, that it is still a skull-faced winged demon. And it is these demons that are protecting and blessing the 2 great seals of the Order of the Illuminati. And it would make perfect sense that it had to be demons used to protect these seals, since I am convinced it was those same demons that handed them over to Thomas Jefferson when they first created them.